The United States has announced a major Air Force exercise in the Middle East a day after the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier group arrived in the region. President Trump has pledged to help Iranian protesters after a deadly crackdown that has claimed thousands of lives. Here's a look now at what a potential U.S. military strike against Iran could look like, as well as the risks that would be involved.
U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened Iran multiple times, responding to reported threats of an assassination attempt.
If anything ever happens, we're going to blow the whole country is going to get blown up.
Iran says it's not kidding either about reacting to U.S. threats.
Trump knows that if any hand is raised to assault our leader, we will not only cut off that hand decisively and courageously, and this is not just rhetoric, but we will set their world on fire.
The U.S. has a range of military capabilities in the region, but they take time to deploy. The USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier group has moved from the South China Sea to the Arabian Sea, a journey of at least a week. There are F-15E fighters already in the region, as well as the possibility of missile strikes. But the U.S. has decreased its military presence since last year's 12-day war in June that pitted the U.S. and Israel against Iran, when there was another full carrier group in the region. Likely targets for a U.S. attack would be bases and headquarters of Iran's elite Revolutionary Guards. Iran's ballistic missile program and Air Force would also be on the target list, and quite possibly the leadership itself. Iran's nuclear program would also be a possible target, but analysts say that after U.S. and Israeli airstrikes last year, the regime has likely moved its facilities around to make them harder to hit. Trump has promised no U.S. boots on the ground. Iran says it will hit back hard in response to any strike, whether there are boots on the ground or not. There are well over a dozen U.S. bases near Iran, many within easy striking distance. Iran also says it would hit Israel. With significant possible downsides to an attack, it remains to be seen if protesters in Iran can rely on the U.S. to help them.
Well, for more, I'm joined now by Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery. He's a retired U.S. Navy commander and now a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Admiral, it's good to have you on the program. Let me ask you, with the USS Abraham Lincoln now within striking distance of Iran and this generally increased U.S. military activity in the region, I mean, do you think that a strike on Iran is now imminent?
Well, certainly, thank you for having me. And certainly what I'd say is the ability to conduct that strike is now imminent. In other words, prior, when the president first spoke a week ago about that he would have the back of the protesters, he didn't really have he couldn't have their back. In other words, we didn't have the forces in play. You need multiple things. One is this carrier strike group, which you properly detailed. The Abraham Lincoln came from the South China Sea. The second are the F-15E Strike Eagles Air Force planes that flowed in, it looks like, from the UK, along with the refueling aircraft that lets both those sets of aircraft conduct long-term operations. And then, of course, you have the long-range strike of B-2s from the continental United States. You mix all those things together, and now you have the ability to conduct offensive operations and back up the president's threat. So is it more likely? Yes, because now the forces are in play. Is it certain to happen? One can never know.
And with all of these possibilities now in place, what would a strike then, in your opinion, what would it look like? Realistically, are we talking with the bombers, with the fighter jets, with missiles? Would they all be part of an attack?
So normally, and then I have to acknowledge that there's an Israeli element to this as well that could join with their F-35s and their F-15s. Because much of the air defense system's already been suppressed by Israeli strikes prior to and during the 12-day conflict, you start off with a smaller suppression of enemy air defense. So you'd be using Tomahawk missiles, some long-range air-launched anti-radiation missiles, suppress the air defense, and then you come in, and I personally would again use Tomahawk missiles against your primary targets, because as you may recall, there are 3 destroyers equipped with Tomahawk missiles with the Lincoln. There is probably one or two U.S. Navy submarines not disclosed in the area. There may not be, but if there are, they'll also launch Tomahawk missiles. And then you follow it up with the B-2s, in my opinion. They can operate in the current conditions in Iran. I think they can operate with relative impunity. And B-2s can each drop, a large number, just under 50 precision attack munitions. And you could have multiple B-2s in play at a time. So that's a lot of striking power. And then if you add in the Israelis, it probably doubles it.
Admiral, what about U.S. allies? Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Qatar. Many countries in the region have said that they are against any type of military strike, military action. I mean, can the United States, can it pull it off? I mean, as you said, it has Israel there assisting it. Is this an operation where these other allies are simply not needed?
That's a great point because no, we need them for some of the basing. The aircraft carrier can operate, the B-2s can operate, but the refueling aircraft and the F-15 Strike Eagles will be operating from our allied air bases in the Middle East. And that, of course, immediately puts them under threat from the Iranians. You may recall that they fired, almost 40 cruise and ballistic missiles and drones at Al Udeid Air Base back during the 12-day war. So absolutely, those countries have what we call skin in the game. And so they're asking the United States to either not do it or give them lots of heads up, or most importantly, bring in the air defense systems. So that's what we're not hearing. Are the Army air defense systems that were withdrawn, last October, November, December, being brought back in to Iraq, to Kuwait, to Al Udeid, to Qatar, to Saudi Arabia, where U.S. Facilities are, to ensure those facilities are protected by both the United States, but also our host nation partners' weapon systems.
Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery. Admiral, we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us tonight. This is a story very fluid. We will continue to follow it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.